Quickly estimating how much healing your party needs is an essential part of efficient healing. On this episode of Healer Leftovers, I'm going to guide you through a couple of tips and tricks for deciding how much healing your party needs, how much healing your skills provide, and how to bridge the gap between these two. One trend I've noticed in my experience healing is that healers don't know how much their heals actually heal for. Take a bread and butter heal like Cure 2, Benefic 2, or Ad Loquium. Close your eyes and pretend you're casting that heal on yourself. Can you see those green numbers? What do they say? How much does the spell heal for? 15k? 25k? 30k? Chances are, you don't know. Before making this video, I honestly didn't either. We're in the same boat here. And that's okay, because knowing the exact number your heals heal for isn't all that important. However, what is very important is how much your heals heal for relative to your target's health bar. How much of a DPS's health is a Cure 2? 1/4? 1/3? 1/2? This is a much more relevant and important question, and one that I'm going to explore in this video. The easiest way to tackle this problem is to simply figure out how much raw healing our heals do, and then do some calculations from there. For the purposes of this video, I sat around and casted Cure 2 on myself about 100 times. With my item level 470 gear, and ignoring crits, Cure 2 heals for about 28,000 HP. At the same time, with this same gear, I have about 90,000 health, so you can see that my entire health bar is just a tad over 3 Cure 2s. Healers have the same amount of health as caster DPS, and melee DPS have about 10,000 more health, so their health bars are closer to 3.5 Cure 2s. So this is nice and all, but it's kind of a pain to remember this 28,000 number. Thankfully, there's an easier way to do things. We know that Cure 2 has 700 potency, and that it heals for 28k. At the same time, we know how much health our DPS have, so this means that we can calculate how much healing potency their entire HP bar is worth. For casters, they have around 2250 potency worth of health, and melee have about 2500. Using these potency numbers, you can easily get the same information as before. 2250 is a little over 3 times the potency of Cure 2, and 2500 is about 3.5 Cure 2s. What's cool about this model though is that you automatically have a feel for how powerful your other healing tools are because their potencies are listed in your tooltips. Cure 1, for example, is 450 potency. This means that it'll take about 5 Cure 1s to top off a DPS. What if you use Physic plus Excog? These combine for 1200 potency, which is about half a health bar. Being able to do napkin math like this on the fly is incredibly helpful and is really useful when you're trying to pick the right healing tools for each situation. If this seems a bit intimidating to you, feel free to use a nice round estimate of 2000 potency for your DPS. In reality, either your DPS will have at least 10% of their health, or they're just dead, so it's pretty rare that you need to heal a DPS for their entire health bar. So now, let's talk about how big your tank's health bars are. Tanks have about 140,000 health, so using the same calculations as before, they have exactly 3500 potency worth of health. Let's run through an example of every healer's worst nightmare, healing living dead without benediction. Suppose you and your co-healer are playing White Mage and Scholar, and for whatever reason, you don't have benediction available. Maybe you used it earlier to make a clutch healing save, or maybe you just fat-fingered it. Regardless, the two of you are now tasked with scraping together 3500 potency worth of healing. How do you handle it? Let's say your White Mage tosses in a Cure 2, and a Flatus Solus, and a Tetra, and your Scholar adds an Excog plus a Physic. Is this enough healing? Unfortunately, you might be just short. In the worst case scenario, none of these skills crit, and you're left 200 potency shy of 3500, so you'll have to scramble while you try to squeeze that last heal in. In most cases though, something will crit and you'll be just fine. Now that single target healing is out of the way, let's talk about AoE healing. It's a pretty well-known fact that regens are some of the most powerful healing spells. For example, Medica 2 has a healing potency of 700 if you get the full effect of its 15-second regen. This is better than even Cure 3, which sits at 550 potency. So then why is Cure 3 always heralded as this incredibly powerful and iconic White Mage spell? Part of the reason for this is that a lot of regens like Medica 2 get wasted because healers don't respect how powerful these regens are and simply heal over them. One way to combat this problem is by using this potency model. If you know how much your regens are going to heal before you use them, you're naturally going to be avoiding overheal. Is the party missing almost half its health? Then you can rest assured that a Medica 2 plus Rapture is going to be enough healing, as long as those regens have time to tick. Another cool thing about regens is that they are a little more dependable in terms of crit variance. What do I mean by this? Let's say you're using Cure 3. There's only 2 outcomes for each player it heals. Either it heals for 22k like normal, or you get a lucky crit and it heals for more like 35k. There's no in between. Each person either gets a small heal or a big heal. Since you're trying to prevent deaths, you always have to play with the assumption that you're going to be unlucky. If someone's life depends on a crit cure 3, you're probably going to get burned. If you have a 20% chance to crit, then there's an 80% chance this person dies. Regens, however, work differently. If you remember earlier, with the Living Dead example, we were combining 5 heals together, and that I said that there's a good chance at least one of those heals crit. So what did I mean here? Assuming that we only use these 5 heals, and we have a 20% chance to crit on each heal, what's the chance that the Dark Knight dies? To calculate this, we simply take the chance that each individual heal doesn't crit, which is about 80%, and multiply all these odds together. So you can see that there's actually only about a 33% chance that the Dark Knight dies. In practice, healers often have higher than a 20% chance to crit, so our odds are even better. We can apply this same idea to regens. Most AoE regens last 15 seconds or 5 ticks. We've just shown that chances are pretty good that at least one of these ticks crit, so we can work this into our potency calculations. Most healers have enough crit to have a crit multiplier of 1.5, so in practice, Medica 2's 700 potency will feel closer to 750. Granted, when you AoE heal, there's still probably one unlucky DPS who doesn't get any crit regen ticks, but that's what Scholar Fairies are for. While we're on the topic of Scholar, let's not forget about the power of Recitation Indom. When you use Recitation, you're guaranteed a crit, so we can just straight up say that Recitation Indom has more than 400 potency. In reality, it's probably closer to 600 or 650, so you can factor that into your calculations. In general, the gap between normal heals and regen heals is usually even bigger than you think. It's very hard to get value out of things like a Crit Cure 3 or Earthly Star. These skills can leave your party at wildly varying levels of health, usually to the point where you'll have to overheal some party members just to even things out. Regens, on the other hand, spread this randomness over multiple instances of healing, making them more predictable and reliable. Combining this knowledge with the potency model I've outlined is an incredible way to lend more clarity to your healing. Once you know how much potency your heal's for, and how much potency your party members need, figuring out what heals you need to bridge this gap becomes surprisingly simple. Thank you all for watching. As always, please leave me a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. You might just have them answered on my next episode of Healer Leftovers.